Okay, guys, for my fellow MGTOWs out there who were yearning for new content from new guys, here it is. I bring to the table this video regarding MGTOW and U.S. immigration, and we're just gonna get right into it. First of all, there's a great misconception out there that foreign women are different, that they're more submissive and less vile, that they're easy to get along with, and that sort of stuff. Um, I want to I want to comment on two things. Number one, I want to comment on guys wishing to leave the country in order to find a woman that has not been infected by the feminist virus. And one thing to keep in mind is that if you travel abroad, wishing to find a more innocent woman in a quote-unquote patriarchal society, you're doomed to fail. And the reason why that is so is because when you travel from the United States to a country that has yet to undergo economic development, you put yourself in a position where you are able to benefit from being on the other side of hypergamy. And these women, that is the local women in these countries, can spot a tourist from a mile away. The fact remains that you are easy prey for them. They have dollar signs, or they will have dollar signs in their pupils when they see you. Another consideration regarding traveling abroad is that our white brothers, our white men from the United States will be favored. And this is largely due in part to a history of Western European colonization that still is reflected in the way in which people think in countries, especially in Latin America, some parts of Asia, and yes, even Africa. In general, people still perceive Caucasians, that is white Americans, and yes, Europeans too, as being more intelligent, wealthier, technologically advanced, etc. Not to discount any of it, or to take sides in this debate, but in regards to MGTOW, if you're anything but white, you don't necessarily benefit from all of the special treatment afforded to men who travel abroad in search for a mate. And that is even if you're loaded, if you teach math, physics, and philosophy at a top-notch Ivy League university in the United States or Europe. If you're a colored man, you just simply will not be perceived as being high on the totem pole as someone who may have blonde hair, blue eyes, etc. Another consideration is to keep in mind that, if anything, In these countries, women are more privileged because they're not expected to participate in the labor force. The expectation is simply not there. Um, and if anything, their psychological games are sharper because they're very survival. They're very survival. Depends on tackling a man on the run. Yes, they can appear to be more charming, but that's because coming from a country or being in a country where resources may have been scarce and where employers prefer stronger, faster, more reliable workers, they have no choice but to be charming. Now, in coming in to the United States, in the USA, women don't have to be as charming. Unless, of course, they're fresh off the boat and don't know um, what the feminist movement allows them to do here in this country. What the feminist movement allows them to get away with here in this country. In regards to women that are here in the United States, I want to say that U.S. immigration is, the whole system is gynocentric. And that this is the reason why the system itself is broken down. The current administration, that is the Trump administration, we're talking here 2019, has proposed changes to this system, promising to make it so that it's based on the skill of workers, people that can come in and produce, as opposed to the system being based on family, being family centered. But there are so many interests entrenched that most likely that will just simply not take place. As I've mentioned before, they say the system is family centered. But we MGTOWs know exactly what that means. It means the women have control over it. It means that it is centered on women, not families. We have come to believe here in the MGTOW community, many of us, that women are incapable of love as envisioned in Shakespeare plays, and it is my belief, my observation from being an immigrant myself, that it is time to adjust to this new reality and to change the U.S. immigration system based on that new knowledge that we have acquired. The question remains, why base the U.S. immigration system on such a fragile set of pillars such as marriage? If marriage breaks, the immigration system breaks down. That is my theory as to why the system is the way it is today. Contrary to popular belief, a worker that is skilled may more easily, quote unquote, assimilate. And this is the word used by immigration honchos, immigration experts. That worker may more easily assimilate into American culture, as opposed to being stuck in a closed immigrant community where the need to speak English never even arises. There are many benefits to the immigrant women that come to the United States under this gynocentric system, wishing to become Americans. As I've mentioned before, the system is gynocentric, and but how exactly the women, how are they given the upper hand? Number one, children born in the United States to parents that are U.S. citizens are favored and are even encouraged in order to facilitate the migration process. This, of course, means that she'll end up trying to do everything in her power to become pregnant as quick as she can. We know how children complicate a marriage, adding all levels of complexity to a man's life. But none of this is taken into account. It's all about the woman. The other way in which she benefits from meeting and pairing with a man that is established is that he has to legally sign an affidavit of support in order for the process to be completed, in order for the immigration process to be completed, and she can get her working documentation. Documentation that, by the way, she does not often use to her full potential, or to its full potential. Family-centered also means that once she gets a green card and that she later becomes a citizen without having to lift a finger, by the way, to make the country better, she can bring her elderly mother and her children from prior relationships that are still abroad. And most of these people just don't produce. And this is to the detriment of the American taxpayer. The American taxpayer suffers, immigrants included. She also benefits from her sexual marketplace rising up dramatically just because she appears to most locals as having a level of mystery and excitement to her, simply because she's from somewhere else. Never mind that she's just as boring as the girl next door. But the benefits to immigrant men, they're few and far between. American women simply don't date broke, recently arrived immigrants that can't speak to entertain them. The guy doesn't even get the time of day. He's usually busy working many hours a day with no chance to become legal unless he marries. For there's no system in place to bring him aboard if he just wants to come in and produce. Social services are not available and are hard to obtain even from native men. Never mind the immigrants. But the women get it all, especially if American kids are involved. He must marry a femiloca. Skilled men cannot exercise the trade because marriage is the only way. I think of Indians, people that come from India, uh, Sri Lanka, etc. People who are highly educated and that can bring something of value to the country, but find themselves um, uh, you know they find themselves stopped by the system, you know. And we have to wonder how much talent, how much human talent are we wasting because the system is gynocentric. The other thing is that American men suffer under these gynocentric immigration system. Women can easily trap a man into providing for her and often her prior family. Again, this is because he has to sign an affidavit of support and say that she's not going to be dependent on social services um, while she's living with him in this country. So after the initial love bombing, she can treat him as she wishes. She can even threaten him with law enforcement because if she's battered, she may be able to still obtain documentation even without him. And if she is established, I'm sorry, once she's established in the country, divorcing him is very profitable for her because he is established. So the other and the last consideration here is that American women also benefit from this gynocentric immigration system. That if by chance or human virtue, that is, if the guy is exceptionally tall, handsome, got a 12-inch you know what, and a woman happens to pair with him, he will still have to provide for her. This is because, again, of hypergamy. If he can't provide for her financially, someone else has to sign the affidavit of support, usually because she doesn't make enough. This, of course, takes time. It can slow down the immigration process. It can take money. Sometimes the man would have to provide an incentive to someone else to sign that affidavit, and there's nothing illegal about that. It can be downright embarrassing for him because it appears as if she supports him, even though the opposite is the case. And if she were ever to threaten him with violence, this means that there's legal trouble for a hard-working man. So it opens the door, this situation opens the door to all sorts of blackmail from her part. And last but not least, if there were children involved, he has to pay child support, even if undocumented. Because how will he legalize or become legal if he owes child support? It just will not be allowed. Thank you guys for listening to my very first video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you had learned something new. as much as I've learned from you guys. Thank you very much.